everybody thought, right, that this was going to be a beatdown. 3-0, 4-0. There was even suggestions that this could be a repeat of the 7-0 game, right? The state that United have been in recent times. But, Mark, they turned up big time yesterday and could have won it. I mean, it finished 2-2, but you could have won it, Mark.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, look, there was some we work in this world. We work with some people in this world, and they get a little bit overexcited and they start talking about 8-0s and stuff like that. I mean, I don't think people realise what needs to happen for that to happen. And look, it's Man United, Liverpool. It's the same. You've got Spurs in a week and a half. The chances that you're going to beat them 8-0, it might happen, but reality is Spurs are going to get a bit of pride, aren't they? And we got a bit of pride yesterday against Liverpool. But beyond that, I heard Arne Slot after the game saying that we played like long ball, deep line.
Yeah.
We had 50% of the ball. Like we did it. You know what? You'll know this. When we came to the Emirates a couple of weeks ago, first half, we had like 60%. We didn't do anything with it, but we had Amorim, obviously, his way of doing it. Some teams want to play a deep low block, and I think he wants to take the ball off the opposition to stop them scoring. And he did that really well yesterday. And we had, like you said, we could have won it at the end, but we definitely had as good a chances as them. And it was so unlike United in recent weeks. We haven't scored over Christmas. So, yeah, I mean, look, I'd have bit your hand off. I said we'd lose that game. So, the annoying thing is, Man United, we've got you next. You'll probably see a completely different performance. But I'd take that. I mean, I'd rather draw and play well than win 1-0 and get lucky. We need performances. I've seen what Arsenal have done. I've seen what Liverpool do. We need to start building an identity. And I saw one yesterday.
Yeah, no, it's a great performance. And I was watching the game. I was shocked, number one, at how brave United were on the ball. You know what I mean? They didn't just. I know Arne Slot said low block, and I definitely thought it's a lot more sensible. It's not one of the things I've been saying about United. You've got to be a bit more sensible and think about the players you've got. He's a lot more sensible in his approach, Ruben Amorim. But they were also very brave on the ball, I thought. You know what I mean? And so many players stepped up. Bruno, that was his best performance I think I've seen all season. Agate, I thought, in midfield was really, really good. And I thought the two fullbacks, Dalot, who I was very impressed with. I thought he was my man of the match.
And he's been so bad recently.
And Mazzarari as well. Those two really stepped up. And, to me, it looked like they stunned Liverpool. The crowd was really quiet up until they scored, and if it weren't for that Delit handball, I don't know, the momentum looked like it was really going with United at one time.
Reminds me of I was talking about it before the game, a proper, a boxing match where you've got a really firm favourite and then an underdog, but the underdog works really hard and sort of goes in the first two rings and they're not getting the punches. And I think you're right. I think Liverpool, it's a tough game when you are going to win 6-7-0. And that's what everyone was saying going into it. And it's never going to be like that. And then, Liverpool's mindset was probably it was going to be an easier game than it was. And at the end of the day, it's a derby. I know it's not a derby, but it is. And I've seen bad Liverpool teams get results against good United sides. And I thought, overall, I actually had a lot of mates who don't support Liverpool and United who were messaging me saying that was a brilliant Sunday afternoon game. I've got work tomorrow after Christmas. And I loved it. Yeah.
No, it's a great game. Great game. I really enjoyed watching it. And, obviously as an Arsenal fan, I was glad to see, because I didn't think United would get something out of it, but they did. On Liverpool, number one, do you think, they got complacent? And number two, self-imploding's too big a word right now. It's a draw. They haven't lost the game. They could have done at the end, Maguire, right, when he blazed it over the bar. But they haven't lost the game. But all these rumours coming out, there was rumours after the game that they had to break up a fight between Van Dijk and Trent, and all these sort of rumours are flying around. Trent Alexander-Arnold coming under heavy criticism, a lot of it from Liverpool fans. Yeah. Because of all the links to Real Madrid, he had an absolute stinker. There was what Roy Keane said about, he'd be lucky to get into... that was brilliant by Roy Keane. He'd be lucky to get into Tranmere Rovers, let alone Real Madrid on that performance. At
least they both wear white.
There's still the Salah rumours. He was going on about it again on Friday. Van Dijk, after the game, asked about his contract. Nothing's close yet. They don't need this, do they? All these distractions. I mean, what are they doing, Liverpool?
I think with, you look at it on Saturday night when Arsenal draw, which we'll talk about, and it's 2 games in hand and 6 points. Well, it's 1 game in hand now, isn't it? And it's 1 game in hand and 6 points, I think, the gap now. Anyway, regardless of that, it's more than you would have thought. Arsenal will have a little bit of hope. I think they're the only team that can do anything. And Liverpool, not as strong in the performance as well as the result. So they've got to pick themselves up. And I think you're right. I don't think they're in an implosion. I still think they're massive favourites to win it. And they have been the best team in the league. And there was a couple of their players I was massively impressed with. But I think that we've seen Forest get a result there. We've seen Man United get a point there. And I think that Arne Slot looked a bit worried after the game to be talking about tactics.
Yeah,
I think he's worried about that. I mean, you know, Arsenal, Man City are used to teams doing this to them, and Liverpool just got to be a little bit careful. And you know, the biggest enemy is the enemy within. Trent Alexander-Arnold was their worst player, and we've just had a week of him, you know, not going to sign a contract. And it's never a problem when you're winning, but then when you start dropping points, they've got to be very careful of that. I mean, I don't know whether I'd start looking at playing Matt Bradley. He's the future anyway, and maybe they might have to deal with that problem. But the trouble with Trent is he's so good going forward. But I think he was arrogant yesterday. I think he wandered into that game thinking, you know, all eyes are on me, and he got exposed, as we've seen so many times defensively.
And it's all right saying play Bradley, but then that could annoy Trent, which then makes him try and force that move. I mean, when you're going for a title, you don't need all this shenanigans going on in the background, innit? I mean, we still think it's been self-inflicted by their board, but, you know, 3 of your best players, contracts not signed, being asked about it every week. You don't need these distractions. You've got a title to go for.
I hope they do implode a little bit, because I want a title race. I think we've had a brilliant game yesterday. I think it's been an amazing Premier League season. The only thing is we don't want to replace Man City with an obvious title winner. So if they could drop a few more points and, you know, Arsenal can pick a few up, then, you know, I'm all for it. But a bit of pressure on Liverpool. That's what we need, isn't it, going into the new year?
Yeah. Well, can Arsenal pressure them? I was at the game on Saturday. Arsenal winning 1-0. Ethan Nwaneri with a goal, who went off at half-time, injured, yet another injury.
I was going to ask you that was an injury, was it?
It was an injury, yeah. I mean, at first, I was thinking at first, at half-time, because when we didn't see him come back, we were all like, why is he taking Nwaneri off? And I was sort of like, well, maybe he was on a yellow card. He's 17. Yeah. We've had troubles this season.
Lots of games.
Double yellows and reds. Maybe it's to protect that. But after the game, Mikel Arteta said, no, it's a muscle injury, which is that. Got to be hamstring.